If you are not familiar with Simon Sinek, you should drop what you are doing to watch his famous TED Talk on how great leaders inspire action. I will link it in the description. Thank me later. In his talk, he explores what made people like Martin Luther King Jr. and the Wright brothers become the leaders they were. And his infamous TED Talk is just a sample of his work.
At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. They're not even responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proudly and say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years. There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer.
Sinek has dedicated his career to studying leaders of all fields to find patterns in their successes and to make that knowledge accessible to everyone who aspires to become a champion in their field. Here are just a few slices of Sinek's wisdom that will hopefully inspire you to innovate, improve, and change your business to achieve better results. Welcome to CMTV10, where we share with you advice that will take you from the life you have to the life you deserve. If you're new here, consider smashing the subscribe button so you don't miss other interesting videos like this one. Without any delay, let's dive straight into the 10 Simon Sinek's quotes that will change the way you do business forever. Quote number 1. Show up to give and not to take. Often, people give presentations to sell products or ideas to get people to follow them on social media, buy their books, or even just like them. Sinek calls this kind of speakers takers, and he says audiences can see through these people right away, and when they do, they disengage.
You have to show up to give. And I will very often, before I walk out on a stage, say to myself out loud, you're here to give, right? There's something I know, or there's something I've seen, or there's something I've discovered that others think is valuable, and I'm here to share it. And I want nothing in return. And it's unbelievable to me how many people show up to take. And you can see it, it's quite clear. You know, when somebody asks a question and they say, you can get the answer in my book. Well, you know the answer, you wrote the book, why don't you just answer the question? As opposed to trying to get book sales, you know? Or people who, you know, you look at their PowerPoint behind them and on every single slide it has their email, it has their website, it has their Twitter handle, it has their Facebook, it has their LinkedIn. They want something from you. They want you to follow them and email them and give them business. And there are people who show up because they want a standing ovation. But if you show up wanting nothing, if you show up wanting no approval, no business, nothing, you're here to give. People sense that.
We are highly social animals, Sinek says. Even at a distance on a stage, we can tell if you are a giver or a taker, and people are more likely to trust a giver, a speaker that gives them value, that teaches them something new, that inspires them, than a taker.
So when we assess that someone on stage is selfishly driven, we'll take their information and we may do a transaction with them, but we won't give them our love and our loyalty. Where when we can tell someone is showing up for us, that wants nothing from us, simply to give to us selflessly, we are grateful and we will in turn give them everything and express our gratitude.
So, quote number 2. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. then why is it that they seem to have something different?
Many companies are focused on selling the futures and benefits of their products. In reality, what motivates people the most is your mission and vision of what you are hoping to achieve with your business.
As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't.
People don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it.
Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one.
Apple isn't about selling personal computers. It's about thinking different and challenging the status quo. Connect You isn't just another social media platform. It's about connecting Africans by Africans and be proud of who we are as Africans. Hence, uniting Africans and giving Africa a voice. I will link it in the description for those who are willing to join the network.
None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad. But he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world.
Quote number 3. When you compete against everyone else, no one wants to help you. But when you compete against yourself, everyone wants to help you.
Other symptoms are when the organization starts focusing more on what the competition is doing and worrying less about what they are doing. When they start asking outsiders, who should we be? How should we talk to you? At the beginning, they never asked anybody. They ran on their own passion and their own energy. This is what happened in such organizations like Apple. In 1985, Steve Jobs left Apple, and the company went like this, and Steve Jobs came back. And Howard Schultz left Starbucks, and Howard Schultz had to come back. And Michael Dell left Dell, and Dell had to come back. Now, whether they're clear on their own whys now or not is yet to be seen. But the point is that these founders, these visionary guys, physically embody the reason, the cause around which people showed up in the first place, and it reminds them why they come to work.
When you follow and react to your competition, you are effectively a follower. Jeff Bezos of Amazon had a more solid advice topic. If we can keep our competitors focused on us while we stay focused on our customers, effectively we will turn out all right. In other words, if you are focused on your mission and your why, you are an innovator. If you are truly innovating, you don't have to worry about what your competitors do.
I spoke at a leadership summit
for Microsoft. I also spoke at a leadership summit for Apple. Now, at the Microsoft Summit, I would say 70% of the executives, and this was under the Steve Ballmer days, I would say about 70% of the executives spent about 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One was obsessed with their competition, the other one was obsessed with where they're going. So at the end of my presentation at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune, which was the competitor to the iPod Touch when it was a thing, right? And I have to tell you, this piece of technology was spectacular. It was beautiful. The user interface was incredible. The design was amazing. It was intuitive. It was one of the most beautiful, elegant pieces of technology I'd ever seen, right? Now, it didn't work with iTunes, which is an entirely different problem. I couldn't use it. But that's something else. I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy, and I decide to stir the pot. And I turn to him and I say, you know, I spoke at a Microsoft summit, and they gave me their new Zune, and I have to tell you, it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and said, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player isn't playing to be number one every day with every product. They're playing to outlast the competition. If I had said to Microsoft, oh, I've got the new iPod Touch, it's so much better than your new Zune, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? We have to see it. Because one is obsessed with their competition, the other is obsessed with why they do what they do, the other is obsessed with where they're going. And the reason Apple frustrates their competition is because secretly, they're not even competing against them. They're competing against themselves. And they understand that sometimes you're a little bit ahead, and sometimes you're a little bit behind. And sometimes your product is better, and sometimes you're not. But if you wake up every single morning and compete against yourself, how do I make our products better than they were yesterday? How do I take care of our customers better than we did yesterday? How do we advance our cause more efficiently, more productively than we did yesterday? How do we find new solutions to advance our calling, our cause, our purpose, our belief, our why every single day? What you'll find is over time, you will probably be ahead more often.
Quote number 4. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Great companies know exactly who their ideal buyer is and focus on doing business with them. If you know who your ideal customers are, you will get much further than merely targeting a fearless mainstream audience.
The goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe.
Airbnb founder Brian Chesky said, it's better to have 1,000 customers love you than millions kind of like you. If you can find people who will love what you have to offer, they will effectively become an advocate of your brand. It is not surprising that companies like Airbnb or Uber got over 50% of their early growth solely from referrals.
Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears.
Quote number 5. Great companies don't hire skilled people and motivate them. They hired already motivated people and inspire them. An ideal candidate is someone with an excellent attitude and a broad skill set. But in reality, you don't always find these people, and you have to choose between skills and attitude. And that is where most companies get it wrong. They go for the skill,
I'll share an example with you that freaks me out every time I talk about it. What's our most valuable possession on the planet? Our children, right? Our most valuable possession on the planet are our children. So let's game out a scenario. Let's imagine we want to go on a date. So we require a babysitter. We have two options. Option number one, there's a 16-year-old from just down the street from within the community with barely, if any, babysitting experience. There's a 32-year-old who just moved into the neighborhood, we don't know from where, but she's got 10 years of babysitting experience. Who do we choose? The 16-year-old. Think about that for a second. We'd rather trust our children, our most valuable possession on the planet, with somebody from within our community with no experience, over somebody with vast amounts of experience, but we have no idea where they're from or what they believe. Then why do we do it differently at work? Why are we so preoccupied with someone's resume and where they've worked and what they've done for our competition, and yet we never think to consider what they believe, where they're from? How can we trust them? How can they trust us? The problem with most organizations, believe it or not, whether it's a community or a culture. What's a community? What's a culture? It's a group of people with a common set of values and beliefs, right? What's a nation? It's a group of people with a common set of values and beliefs. And the single biggest challenge that any culture or any organization will ever face is its own success. When an organization is founded, all organizations are founded on the same basic principles. There's some sort of measurement. It's often money, but it can be anything. And then there's time. And when an organization is founded, what they do and why they do it are inextricably linked. There are usually some founder or some small group of founders that are able to put their vision into words, and their passion inspires others to come and join them in pursuit of something greater than all of themselves. And they trust their guts and off they go, and it's an amazing experience. The problem is, as they grow, as what they do becomes more successful, they can no longer rely on themselves. They have to now hire somebody who hires somebody who hires somebody who hires somebody who hires somebody who has to make a decision. Based on what? And what they do starts to grow, that metric. The problem is, why they do it starts to go fuzzy. And this is the biggest single challenge any organization will face. It's this thing right here, the thing that I call the split.
A quote from Jonathan Henrik says, "A leader realizes a skill is what you can teach, but attitude won't change." In reality, a positive attitude and the right culture fit are much harder to find. Those are the people you want on your team.
The very survival of the human race depends on our ability to surround ourselves with people who believe what we believe. When we're surrounded by people who believe what we believe, something remarkable happens. Trust emerges. Make no mistake of it, trust is a feeling, a distinctly human experience. Simply doing everything that you promise you're going to do does not mean people will trust you. It just means you're reliable. And we all have friends who are total screw-ups, and yet we still trust them. Trust comes from a sense of common values and beliefs. And the reason trust is important is because when we are surrounded with people who believe what we believe, we're more confident to take risks. We're more confident to experiment, which requires failure, by the way. We're more confident to go off and explore, knowing that there is someone from within our community, someone who believes what we believe, someone we trust and who trusts us, will watch our back, help us when we fall over, and watch our stuff and look after our children while we're gone. Our very survival depends on our ability to surround ourselves with people who believe what we believe.
Quote number 6. Let us all be the leaders we wish we had. This one is self-explanatory, isn't it?
There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all we really have to do. And some people actually go get advanced educations so that they can be really good at their jobs, accountants or whatever, right? And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And that's what we do. We work very hard. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. And that's why we get managers and not leaders. Because the reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. Really what we have to do is go through a transition. Some people make it quickly, some people make it slowly, and unfortunately some people will never make that transition at all. Which is we have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. And leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you practice it all the days, you will get good at it and you will become a strong leader. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader.
As a small business owner, your team looks to you for guidance. Make sure you are setting an example you are proud of.
Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. Remember, you're not in charge, you're responsible for those in your charge. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility. That sucks, right? It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. It's things like when something does actually break, when something goes wrong, instead of yelling and screaming and taking over, you say, try again. When the overwhelming pressures are not on them, the overwhelming pressures are on us. At the end of the day, great leaders are not responsible for the job. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. They're not even responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proudly and say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years. There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer. You want to be a great leader, start with empathy. You want to be a great leader, change your perspective and play the game you're actually playing.
Quote number 7. Customers will never love a company until the employees love it first.
I'll tell you a true story. A few months ago, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. It is a wonderful hotel. And the reason it's a wonderful hotel is not because of the fancy beds. Any hotel can go and buy a fancy bed. The reason it's a wonderful hotel is because of the people who work there. If you walk past somebody at the Four Seasons and they say hello to you, you get the feeling that they actually wanted to say hello to you. It's not that somebody told them that you have to say hello to all the customers, say hello to all the guests, right? You actually feel that they care. Now, in their lobby, they have a coffee stand. And one afternoon, I went to buy a cup of coffee, and there was a barista by the name of Noah who was serving me. Noah was fantastic. He was friendly and fun, and he was engaging with me, and I had so much fun buying a cup of coffee, I actually think I gave 100% tip, right? He was wonderful. So as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? And without skipping a beat, Noah says, I love my job. And so I followed up. I said, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that would make you say to me, I love my job? And without skipping a beat, Noah said, throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, if there's anything that I need to do my job better. He said, not just my manager, any manager. And then he said something magical. He says, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And at Caesar's Palace, the managers are trying to make sure we're doing everything right. They catch us when we do things wrong. He says, when I go to work there, I like to keep my head under the radar and just get through the day so I can get my paycheck. He says, here at the Four Seasons, I feel I can be myself. Same person, entirely different experience from the customer who will engage with Noah. So we in leadership are always criticizing the people. We're always saying, we got to get the right people on the bus. I've got to fill my team. I got to get the right people. But the reality is, it's not the people. It's the leadership. If we create the right environment, we will get people like Noah at the Four Seasons. If we create the wrong environment, we will get people like Noah at Caesar's Palace.
Your employees are your greatest assets. They are the soul of your small business, and their attitudes translate into the product, customer service, and marketing messages. As the popular saying goes, if you don't love yourself, who else is going to? Employees are the company, and if your small business doesn't love itself, no one else will either.
It's not the people. And yet we're so quick to hire and fire. You can't hire and fire your children. If your kids are struggling, we don't say, you got to see at school, you're up for adoption. So why is it that when somebody has performance problems at work, why is it that our instinct is to say, you're out? We do not practice empathy. What does empathy look like? Here's the lack of empathy. This is normal in our business world. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into our office and says, your numbers have been down for the third quarter in a row. You have to pick up your numbers, otherwise I can't guarantee what the future will look like. How inspired do you think that person is to come to work the next day? Here's what empathy looks like. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into your office and says, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. What's going on? We all have performance issues. Maybe someone's kid is sick. Maybe they're having problems in their marriage. Maybe one of their parents is dying. We don't know what's going on in their lives. And of course it will affect performance at work. Empathy is being concerned about the human being, not just their output.
Quote number 8. Henry Ford summed it up best. If I had asked people what they wanted, he said, they would have said a faster horse. It is fair to say this actually isn't Simon Sinek's quote, but Henry Ford's. Too many companies try to determine their product direction or create marketing messages based strictly on customer input. With that mindset, you will never become a leader. When asked, most customers will only offer you a variation of something they already know. In his book, Nail It, Then Scale It, Stanford professor Nathan Foe states that entrepreneurs innovate, customers validate. Ask customers about their pain points, but come up with a solution yourself. Don't ask them what to do. Execute, get feedback, listen, and adjust. Quote number 9. If you can clearly articulate the dream or the goal, start. Your customers will love you for your mission and your values, but you must be able to effectively communicate them first.
Even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers' team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually, on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, "That's an amazing discovery, guys. Now we'll improve upon your technology." But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe.
Quote number 10. Say thank you when you're done with any presentation. Applause is a gift, and when you receive a gift, it's only right to express how grateful you are for it. This is why Sinek always closes out his presentations with these 2 simple yet powerful words. Thank you. They gave you their time and they are giving you their applause, says Sinek. That is a gift and you have to be thankful.
Applause is like a gift. They don't have to give it to you. And if they didn't really like you, they'll give you some sort of polite applause and it'll be over immediately. But if they really appreciated what you said to them, maybe they'll give you a standing ovation. Or maybe they just will keep applauding and applauding and applauding and applauding. It goes on and on. These are all the expressions of gratitude. And they're gifts. So just as if someone were to give you a gift, a physical gift in a box, it would be rude to just push it back. It would be rude to say, "I don't need a gift." So too is it really important to accept the applause with gratitude. So when they applaud you, you stand on the stage, you look at them one at a time, just as you did while you were speaking, and you say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." You look at each one in the eye and you say, "Thank you." And once you've decided you've said thank you enough, and you've decided to walk off the stage, walk off the stage. Just as you came on with confidence and then stood and waited to start, when you've decided that you've said thank you and you can now leave the stage, you walk off the stage. Don't stop, don't come back, don't do lots of these on your way out. You've said your thank yous and now walk off with the same confidence that you walked on. And that's when your presentation is concluded.
Are there any other Simon Sinek quotes that will change the way you do business that you know? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for spending some time with me. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next, and see you again, for we upload new videos weekly.